Okay, well, thank you everyone, and welcome to Adobe's Professional Development Live Sessions. Really glad to have you here today. We have a great session from Product Manager Damien Borba. He works on the Adobe Experience Design, XD you might know it as, or previously known as Comet. For some of you who have been working and following this, I think since Max, when I started talking about it last year. Today's session, we'll learn about the product. We'll see a short demo and discuss your educational context for how you teach website, mobile app design, and prototyping in the classroom. I know several of you from your introductions, it looks like this is commonplace. It looks like some of you have also tried out, have tinkered with XD so far, so we're really looking for your feedback. This is a great session to, one, give Damien some feedback, also ask questions. Two, talk about your own teaching experience. How do you use this tool? If you don't use this tool yet, do you think you will, and how would you use it? And three, how about your students? Reflections on how you think they could benefit from this as well. Today's session is really meant for reflection on your own professional development and your teaching practice. So with that said, I'll hand over the reins to Damien and let him take over. Before I do that, I want to say as a housekeeping rule, we do have a question pod in the bottom left-hand corner. So throughout the presentation, I'll be monitoring the Q&A. So feel free to write down questions, thoughts, reactions, feedback. We will pause throughout the presentation and also save some of it towards the end. So I just want to make sure we do capture all of your thoughts throughout it, so feel free to type in there. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and without further ado, I'll hand it over to Damon.
Great, thanks. Let me start sharing my screen here. Share my screen. Desktop. Minimize this. All right, can you see it? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, clear.
Perfect. All right. And if you have questions along the way, please ask. This is really for you guys, and I'm here to not only show XD and the current state of it, but also like to learn from you and see if we could identify some opportunities to improve the product. And this is what it makes it so special, right? I don't know if you heard about the process we're using for to develop XD. We're taking a very open and transparent approach. We have a very good team working super hard to deliver a Mac version, a final Mac version later this year, and a Windows version also later this year. And for now, you can access a preview of the Mac version, and we have updates every month. The Windows one will be released later, and then, but for now, again, you'll be able to test and play with the Mac one. So hopefully, if you have a Mac, you would be able to use it now, today. To create some context on what Adobe XD really is, everything started around like 18 months ago when we were looking at the UX challenge of today. That's a lot more complex than just screen design. Right? It's not just visual design. Now designers, they have to they start probably on paper with some sketches, then they go to a tool to do some wireframes, they then do high fidelity design, then they jump to a prototyping tool to kind of create a flow and transfer what's in their minds to a stakeholder, to a developer. Then every time they need to change something, they have to go back to the design and make those changes. The problem is that process today is full of friction. So you have to jump from tool to tool if you use different tools out there. And we're really looking at this whole UX process, and we are trying to remove all the friction we can. And not only that, we also know that Photoshop and Illustrator, they were not initially designed for the UX challenge. Of course, they're amazing for bitmap editing in case of Photoshop, and Illustrator is really good for vector artwork creation, but they were not initially designed for this challenge. The idea with XD is to, let's say, cover 80% of the UX challenge, and if you really need to do like high fidelity, I would say like real bitmap editing, you can go to Photoshop. If you need to do like crazy complex vectors, you can go to Illustrator and bring those contents back to XD. But the idea is to enable you to use XD to tell the story. We see XD as a communication tool for designers. One of the things I'd like to highlight is that we're not going past the prototyping phase. So we don't want to go to a place where it generates code or it commits to a specific framework. We want to make sure we solve the designer problem first, and later we can open up some APIs for developers to connect to their existing workflows in terms of production and code generation. So it's really important to highlight that it doesn't generate code and it ends when a designer tests the prototype. So the idea is to, again, quickly start from a low fidelity design to a high fidelity design, jump to prototype, share, learn, and go back to design if necessary in a very fluid way. So this is Adobe XD. You have your design tools on the left. Very simple. This tool is being built from scratch. So everything you see here is built from scratch. We have a dedicated and very talented team of engineers, some of the best engineers working on Adobe XD. It's a huge deal for Adobe, so this is just the beginning. And if you commit the time and invest the time here, you will pay off big time in the future. For example, if I have let's say I want to use the pen tool here to do something, you can start using the pen tool, and we really wanted to do the best pen tool in the market. So one of the things that we learned, and again, going back to the friction challenge, you don't have to switch context. You don't have to switch to a different tool to add anchor points, for example. So if I need to add anchor points, I just roll over an existing path, and then I can click there, and I can move it. If I need to get rid of this, the handles, I just double-click, and they go away. If I want them back, I just double-click again. So we really wanted to make the best pen tool out there. It looks simple, but it's extremely powerful. And another thing that's important here, everything in XD is contextual. So if you see now I have this rectangle created on this side here on the context panel, everything describes the properties of this rectangle here. Of course, I can do rounded corners. I can hold the Option key to do a specific one. And then if I need to change the color, I can change it here. If I want to save this color to my swatch panel, I just click here and it gets added. Then I can add more colors and keep adding things. I can use hex code here to go faster. And I can also do like transparency. And if I need to remove a swatch here, I just click and drag, and then it's removed. So this way you can keep track of your swatch panel. So let's say you want to start creating a design, a real design for an iPhone 6 app. So what you can do is go here and select the Artboard tool. Then you can see some presets. Now we'll do iPhone 6. When I do that, I get rid of that infinite canvas, and now I have one artboard representing my iPhone 6. I can create more artboards very easily. Kimberly says she can't see anything. Are you guys seeing the screen? Okay, so let's move on. All right, perfect. All right, so now that I have this guide here, let's say, of course, you could design components and go from there. But what if you could go here and access some UI kits? Maybe it's an iOS project, but it could be a Google Material Design one or a Microsoft Windows one. Let's choose the Apple iOS one here, and I can, for example, copy the header here, the part where I have the clock, and paste, and I can do it here as well, and everything is fully editable. One thing that's important here is that you can open hundreds of artboards. For example, if I open the UI kit project here, and you can see everything super smooth, and you'll see that everything works fine. I don't know if it's coming across on Connect, but it is really fast. So performance is a feature in XD, and we have lots of unit tests and end-to-end tests to guarantee performance. So we are really obsessed with performance. One of the pillars that we had for Adobe XD is really like the design at the speed of thought, and we want to keep that as fast as possible. So going back to our project here, now you can imagine you can use grid, so you can select the artboard. It's contextual, so I will activate a grid. Now if you design things, let's say I design this circle, you can see it's snapping to my artboard, to my grid. And if I need to align this guy, I can align it here. And let's say that now I want to make this a placeholder for an image. Let's say I want to represent an avatar. That's easy. I can go to my Finder, select an image. Let's say this is that image I want. I just drag it from Finder to here, and now I get my avatar represented there. I can get rid of the border. One thing that I recommend is, like, if you, as you design, you can open the preview window. So all the changes here are reflected there, so you can have this on a separate monitor, and you can really see things as you design. And you can expect the same preview here running on an iOS app and Android app that we're working on. They will be delivered later this year. So you can just be patient. We're working super hard on that, and that will be available there as well. So you can go and move fast with your designs. So let me open another project.
Damien,
Yes?
a quick question. I noticed, you opened up Finder and pulled a file that is locally stored on your machine. Could you also drag files or pictures from, let's say, an internet search into there as well?
Yeah, so I can go, for example, to here, and I say surfing. Then I get a couple of images. Let's get back to XD. Oh, this guy's in front. Okay, then I can get this image and just drag it there, and I get that image here.
Great.
It's the same process. So there are two things here I think it's important to highlight to you guys. This is now becoming a fill of this object. So if you resize this guy, it's now the fill. If you really want to have control of your mask, you got to create a mask. So in this case, let's say I want to have the same thing. So I will design a circle on top of my image, select both. Then I go to Object, Mask with Shape. Now I can edit, if I double click, I can edit not only the position of my image, but also the mask. So I can, for example, play with vector work here and make it like, move it like this, select this image, bring it here. So now I can have more control of my mask. So you have these two ways of doing that. Let me open a new file here that has more artboards, so it's easier to showcase more things. So here I have some mobile designs. I have a website design, and I have a tablet design, all within the same file, and you can zoom in and out. Everything really flies. Then let's say you need to bring content from Illustrator or Sketch or any vector tool. It's just a matter of copy from that place and paste here, and it it's editable. So let me open one here to show you that. So I have an Illustrator file. Let's wait for Illustrator to open. It's just a simple icon that has multiple anchor points, and as you imagine, it'd be nice to have that in my file. So I just select the element here, go back to XD, and I paste that. When I paste that, you can see it comes across, and because it's vector, I can, let's say, play with this, edit the shape, and I can also change the color of this guy here because it's editable. We're also working on having a gradient editor. So if you need gradients, you can do that in Illustrator for now. Copy and paste here, and now it comes across as well, and you can edit that. You can edit the same thing we did there. It comes here, so that's how you use gradients for now. But very soon we'll be able to edit that in XD. Another thing that we have is the ability to, for example, let's say you want to create this pin icon here, and it's made of two objects. So I would do one, and then another one. Then I will use the alignment tools here. And now I will use the Boolean operators here to, in this case, subtract. And now what is cool about this is that I can make changes to this guy. Let's say I want to make it something like this. And everything here is non-destructive. So I can go back to the Boolean operator here and turn it on or off. In order to create this pin here, all I got to do is double click on the path, select this anchor point, and as you can imagine, I just drag it down. I get a guide to help me, and I double click to get rid of my handle. In this case, I can add a shadow if I want to. And there I have my final pin. If you need to export this guy or any other things, you can go to File, Export, and here you can export this for production as PNG. And if you pick PNG, you'll be able to do export at 1x. If you do web, you're going to be able to export at 1x and 2x, iOS 1x, 2x, and 3x, and Android, all those sizes that the Android platform requires. I can also export as SVG, and if I have an image in a group that's being exported using SVG, that image has the option to be embedded in the code as base64, or it can be a linked image, so it'll be sitting close to the SVG file. And I can even optimize the code so you can minify to make it smaller and it will download faster. And an important point here is that we have some of the engineers working on this SVG export defining the specs of SVG. So it's really highly optimized SVG. And the last option that will be available very soon is PDF. So we'll be able to export as PDF as well. One thing that we get as a question is how can we export all the artboards as PDF, for example? That's a great question. And you can just, the only process is like, don't select anything, have everything like not selected. Then you go there, export, and you choose PDF, and now you can export all the artboards. And in the end, you get one PDF file with multiple pages and one artboard per page, which helps a lot.
Hey, Damien, there's
Another thing.
A question here from Shannon regarding XD files. Have XD files, will they be able to be opened in either Muse or Dreamweaver to then be built?
No. The idea, again, is to solve the designer problem for now, and we have a long journey ahead of us. There's a lot to do. And before we get there and we integrate with more tools, we chose to integrate first with Photoshop and Illustrator so you can copy and paste things from there. And if the community wants, and if we see like a huge need for integration with Muse and everything, one thing that we're doing, and I highly encourage you to check this, is go to adobeXD.uservoice.com. This is a place where you can suggest features or file bugs. And here we have close to 700 feature requests already. And we product managers, we come here all the time and we update the status of features. For example, we know that the top idea here is scrollable area, and we are tackling that. I will show the first step of scrolling, and once we finish this feature, you'll be able to, we will change this status, and then if you voted for this, you'll get an email saying, okay, this is done, or sometimes we need more, for example, in this case, we tell the features in the backlog. Sometimes we ask for more information, so we say like feature needs more information, so this one is under review. And this, for example, feature needs more information. So we can ask you guys, holders, to provide more information. So it's a really close relationship with you guys, with the community. And you can really influence how the tool will evolve, which is super cool. All right, so moving forward, we know that designers need to repeat elements all the time. So let's say I want to create a list of results here. Normally you would copy and paste, and you have some guides to help you, like get perfect spacing and everything. But then if you need to change this thing, it's very painful. For that, we created this tool called the Repeat Grid. So all you got to do is select all the elements you want to repeat. In this case, there's 3 elements. Then on the property inspector, you select Repeat Grid, and now you just repeat these elements. Then if I need to change the padding, again, it's just do this, and that's reflecting. The cool thing about the repeat grid is that all the properties are global to the grid. So if I change, for example, the color of this guy to a red, everything changes to a red. And if I change X and Y positions, everything changes to throughout my whole grid, as you can see here. But what is nice here is that content can be unique. So I can, for example, type something here and have it a unique title, or I can go deeper, and let's say I have a text file that has some location. So I have one location and return another one. It's a simple text file. I could drag that text file to my repeat grid, and it populates my grid. That's very, very powerful. So the same way I could do repeat grids vertically, I can do them horizontally. I can adjust padding. Now I can, for example, repeat this whole thing. I'll make it bigger like this. Then I can adjust padding to make it closer. It's fine. Then I can do the same thing that you saw. I could drag some food titles to my grid here, and now it populates my grid with real titles that I had for my food. And I can do the same thing for images. So if I have a set of images to represent my search, I just select all of the images I want, and I drag them to my repeat grid, and then it populates the grid. So I can very easily export different versions of my design, and that it is reflected throughout the grid. And again, content can be unique, so I can say this is the most expensive food you can get, but you get the idea, right? And one thing that we do also, like based on that feedback that I was showing you before, we know that scrollable area is the most requested feature there, so we're working towards a solution for that. And the first step that's already available for you guys is called scrolling long artboards. So if I have this guy here that normally would expect to scroll because my repeat grid is longer, it doesn't scroll. But if I select the artboard and I extend its height, you can see now I get this blue dashed line, and now that represents the fold, and now it really scrolls. We don't have a way to define this as a fixed header, for example, but the second step on scrolling that we're working on is the definition of viewports. So let's say I want to make this area scrollable. Then the way it will work is that you define this as a vertical scrollable area, and only inside this area things will scroll, and everything that's outside of this area will stay fixed. So even if you want to do that fab icon for Android that has the plus button, you could place it on top of your scrollable area, and that will stay fixed. So that solves two problems in one. So we're really trying to move forward and finish that, so you can expect that in the near future. Another thing that we have here is if you need to mimic this background blur effect, you can design a rectangle, put it on top of your design, and everything that's behind, once you select background blur here, will get blurry, and you can define how much you want that. So it's making everything behind this guy blurry. Perfect. All right, so that's a summary of the things you have in design mode. But now let's say you want to start prototyping things because you want to transfer what's in your mind. You want to define the flows, how the screens will change, and everything. Normally today, if you use other tools, you'd have to now export the artboards. You'd have to import into a prototyping tool. Then if you need to make changes, you have to go back to your design, re-export. So there's a lot of friction there. Here in XD, all you got to do is move your mouse to the top and click here in prototype. That's all you got to do. And then let's say I want to move, as soon as my user taps on this, let me open the preview window here to show you that in action. So let's say that as soon as my user taps on this screen, on this text field here, I want it to go to this artboard. So I just drag a wire there, and as soon as I check my preview window, that interaction is already working. Then if I need to go back, I just draw a wire back there, I change the segue, and then that thing just works. I don't have to keep be refreshing or recompiling. It just works. And like I said in the beginning, you will be able to see this very soon on iOS and Android as soon as we finish the mobile app, the companion app. Then when it's time to share this and to learn, you can do it in two ways. The first way is by clicking on the record button. So you can click here to start recording. Then you can play with your prototype. You can even click and drag to simulate someone is tapping and dragging. Then you can go back to the first screen. Once you're finished with your animation, with your interaction, you can click here and you get a movie to share with your stakeholders to get feedback. Or you can share this online. So when you do that, you can give it a title. And then you can drag an image to be your thumbnail. And then you can create a link. Now all the necessary assets are being uploaded to Creative Cloud. And once it's done, once all the files are there, come on, Internet, you get two things. You get a link that has that prototype working, and you have also an iframe as embeddable code that you can place on your website or Behance and see your prototype. So let's go back to the link here. And then if you click there, you will see the same link that we had there working here. So even scrolls, and you can click back, so you can share this link with your stakeholders, get feedback. Let's say the logo has to be black, for example. That's the lesson we learned. So all you got to do is go back to your design, select this guy here, and change the color to black. And now you can share again. And now you can update the existing link or create a new one. Let's say you create a new flow, but I will update the same one.
And Damien, a quick question while you do that. Will it store your links in the Creative Cloud for future use?
Yes, you'll be able to manage that. So just let me show that change here reflected. So we made it black, the logo black. Now it's loading. The Internet here is not that great, but yeah, you see it's reflected there. So it's very seamless and it's frictionless. So answering your question about where the links are stored, or how you can revoke or manage them, you can click here on Manage Links. And I don't know if I'm logged in my browser. I am. So here you see all of your prototypes. And here you can play them again. You can, in this case, it will be this one. You can revoke them if you want to. So just delete them and things just work. So that's pretty much where XD is right now. Again, it's still in beta. There's a lot to do in terms of functionalities, but I would love to have a follow-up meeting with you guys to show some of the new things we're working on, like gradients and that viewport for scrolling that I mentioned, going to the previous artboard, lots of different things that we're working on. And we're starting to do some things like micro-interactions, investigations for libraries, for collaboration, and you can start seeing that later this year. And again, I will have a Windows version by the end of this year as well. So that's XD in like 30 minutes, and if you have any questions, I will be super happy to answer.
Hey, thanks a lot, Damien. That was great. I just encourage everyone to type any questions, thoughts, reflections into the question pod. You know, I'll actually kick things off here with a question about teaching beginners. And Damien, I know your background is actually as an educator, so we benefit greatly from that because you're doing product, you're doing community outreach, you're also doing education connection. And I'm wondering, have you seen people approach the app, using templates, using blank artboards, or using tutorials? do you see one approach better than another when you're teaching people how to use XD?
I think if you take this idea that it is a communication tool, and you have, if you need to use UI kits or components, you can get them from the tool. That gives you some path. One thing that I also, let me share my screen again. I just want to show one thing. One thing that we use XD for is for presentations. So remember I said it's a communication tool, so I can open, I recently delivered a talk on design thinking, and I did everything in XD. So here I have all my artboards, and if you play here, you can see all the slides when I hit the arrow keys. That's my daughter. Yeah, you can see like things just work, and you can share the link as a shareable link, so you can share, let's say, a class just by providing the link. So it is really a communication tool, and it helps you tell what's in your mind in a very fast and effective way.
You know, as a follow-up question, and maybe related to one that Shannon asked earlier about exporting and whether the XD file would be opened and used or Dreamweaver to then be built. You know, I'm wondering if, let's say, I put a lot of time, or one of my students puts a lot of time into creating a great app with great design elements to it. What's the next step? Where do I point then if they want to build it, if they want to turn this into a functional application?
Yeah, the investigation that we did and all the conversations we had with lots of customers and even students is that developers, they don't like to get predefined code. And we tried that in the past and we failed. So for these big companies, they have like very strong design languages like Airbnb and LinkedIn and Google. They really like to, the designers need to give the assets to developers, or the developers just need to extract the assets. And they pick the frameworks they want, the technologies they want, instead of kind of giving them existing code. And that's the route we're taking with XD. You can use the export functionality to get SVG, PNG, PDF, and give that to developer. In the future, you'll be able to have a more integrated connection with your developers by let's say having specs, so they will be able to extract things in a faster way from your files.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a question from Miguel. Looking back at design mode,
okay.
Will there be an asset panel with the different UI elements organized by a platform, or is it always necessary to open the file where they are available to copy from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for now, because we're building this from scratch and there's a lot to do, we're doing that, achieving that by having a separate file. But we are looking into ways of providing panels and libraries that can be managed by, let's say, not managed, but moderated by, let's say, for example, Airbnb. They have a design language system, so they have this big design system with all the components they have. So we're working towards providing that as a panel so they can drag and drop things to XD. But that's the next step, and we still have a lot to do before we get there, but that's where things are going if you imagine.
And Damien, will I give some folks some extra time to ask questions, feedback in the question pod? You mentioned, you wanted to get together a group of educators and get their feedback on some future feature development. What's the best way for them to connect? Is it maybe a similar forum or live event through the Education Exchange community? Is it through the user voice? What do you think in terms of next steps for those who are interested in being educators, giving you feedback?
Yeah, I think for the ones that are curious to use the product and using classrooms, it's free. You can use it for free with your students, and uh, you can reach out to Remy if you have questions and everything. But if you really want to get involved, and if you have the time to commit to working with us, like by providing feedback, and it takes time, right? It takes commitment. Then we can talk and we can add you to pre-release. But again, it's really necessary that you commit to this project in terms of like providing time and dedicate time to it. So I would love to have you guys there if you have the time to collaborate.
Got it. Got it. That's great feedback for anybody who's actually a few folks just joining us here. We've moved from the demo into Q&A session, as you can tell, and the question was about how to involve educators into the process. XD is really taking, I think, a great step forward in asking the community what features, how to build it, getting a lot of feedback, community interaction, and your voice as an educator is a real big part of driving this. And so we were talking about next steps, how you could help out, and for those of you really interested and have the bandwidth, the time, sounds like there's a great forum potentially if you want to commit to getting involved in the pre-release program.
Yeah.
And also, for those of you, I'll post it again here, but this user voice website is a great place. You can see all the activity on it already. Miguel asks, is Adobe working on an ACE certification for XD already?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to reach 1.0 first, but yeah, you can imagine that will be a next step for sure. Yeah.
Sounds like certification is coming, but first got to get the product out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I think it goes back to the fact, and this is my personal opinion, it is such a huge deal for Adobe that we're investing. Like when I joined, the team was small. Now we're close to 100 people, and the team is growing. So it is a huge deal for Adobe. This software is in beta. It's early, so you can really influence the tool. So 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now, if you commit the time now, it will be an amazing investment.
This was great. Damien, I'm not sure if you can see the chat here, but Jan's talking about running a web design boot camp, and I've already started teaching students how to use XD.
Cool.
That's great. Yeah, Jan, maybe if you have a link, if you have any kind of website or name of the boot camp, we'd love to learn more about it. That's great.
Yeah, totally. And again, I think you guys can be a very good resource of like feedback as well. If you get feedback from your students, from other colleagues, please send us our way. Like do like a summary, send an email to Remy. I'm sure he will send it to us, and all the product managers will take a look. And yeah, we can go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is a really good, really good point to bring up. The education exchange. I mean, I know all of you who are attending today are active on that. I mean, clearly you found out about this live session through the education exchange. What I'll do actually as the next step is I'll start a discussion, and I think that would be a great place to kind of put all of our energy and comments and maybe some feedback. If you're not already involved in the user voice, this could be another place on the education exchange.
Totally. I also have like, maybe if you're curious, I have a link. I just published a blog post today highlighting the process that we use for XD. So I will paste here in the chat. So if you're interested in learning why we're doing this and how we're doing this and how everything started, it's there. It maybe can help you also to create projects.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Damien.
No problem.
It looks like Michael had a question, and so does WP. Is XD like a mobile app that XD can take updates instead of starting from scratch?
Is XD like a mobile app? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, Michael, can you expand a little bit more on that? Because
Yeah, like if I get the question right, you'll be able to have a file, an XD file, and you can learn and you can create new flows. For example, let me share my screen again and show. Uh, let's say I have this, let me go back to this project. And I learned that now I have to do more, so I can create more artboards, I can edit them, then I can share again, or if I have to create a completely new workflow, I can copy this guys up here, then make changes, and then share this workflow. And you can have multiple uh, projects, for example, mobile ones and websites and tablets. If you preview the website one, you see it's a website, and you can scroll. So you can really go deep here and create variations of your designs. Does that answer your question? Yeah, so the thing is, like, when you share your link, you have an option. You can update the existing link that you have, or you can create a new link. If you update the one, then the changes will be gone. But if you create new links, those previous will live forever until you revoke them.
So that's helpful feedback, just thinking about version control and how many different versions are out there.
Yes.
And it looks like WP asked a question earlier, I think about, working in the pre-release version now, and then the plan is to have a sort of final release or 1.0. If I understand that correctly, then I think, Damien, as I understand the development of XD, it will be released and you'll keep improving upon it. So when there are updates, I guess what we encourage you to do is to always update the products.
Yeah, totally. And we have releases every month for the public. And if you have the time to commit and you join pre-release, we have releases at every 2 weeks. But again, it's a lot of commitment. So think really hard, because it's a great opportunity, but it requires a lot of time as well.
Shannon here asks, do you feel that those designing websites or mobile apps will benefit best from this? She's thinking of those designers who create responsive sites rather than a desktop mobile version.
Yeah, again, this doesn't generate code. It's not like Muse. Muse is more like, I think, what you need, which is a way of designing and get code, and that's responsive and everything. XD is more for you as a communicator, as a designer, to transfer what's in your head, not only the visual design, but also the prototype, finding a way to share it quickly and to learn quick and to fail fast, so you can guarantee you're going on the right track. And then when it's time to go to production, then you can export assets, final assets for developers, and they can pick the frameworks they want, the technology they want.
Got it. Great. Any more questions out there from any of you all? I know this has been a great session. Thank you, Damien. I think we've gone through just like the how-tos, demos, tutorials, but also talking about bigger concepts of like what is the workflow? How do we, when we teach it, how do we teach like the next step and how to think about this tool in that process?
Yeah, I think no, totally. And I think if you read my post there, it explains that today the designer or the UX designer and everyone that creates a product needs to validate fast before you get to like actual production in order to have a successful product. And XD gives you that opportunity for you to design, prototype, validate and then you go back to your design and you can make the changes before you really commit to like develop it.
Mm. And it looks like Jan has shared a link to his boot camp here, and then thank you, Jan. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I clicked there, but I don't speak Chinese. I know like Shen Shen, Shen Shen. That's all I know.
Yeah, I think maybe, let's see, if you open up in Chrome, you could do a quick Google Translate. Let's see, Michael asks, how has the public reacted to XD immediate acceptance, question mark?
I think for the ones that understand the vision, that's just the beginning, and we're setting up ourselves to like a big plan that involves a lot of new things for designers. Then they got super excited that they're on board. But again, it'll take some time for, I think you bring it to like your real workflow. But for education, because you're teaching people to think, right, and to learn fast, I think this is a perfect tool. And even like if you want to do presentations like I did, I use XD to run all my slides for all the presentations I deliver.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cool, yeah, and yeah, share that with us when you have it public.
Great. Well, Damien, well, actually, sorry, Shane, I just want to, like the presentation aspect. Originally I had been thinking about it as an app, but I think you've helped to open, helped to broaden, I think, the lens of how to look at XD and thinking about it as a presentation tool as well.
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to the fact that we see it as a communication tool. So to tell you, transfer what you have in mind to anyone, and that involves presentations as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Looks like you have one more question here from Joanne in the chat bot. How do you hand off designs from XD to programmers? Like how I hand off layered files to programmers.
Yeah, the way you do now, like because it's still beta and we're still evolving that aspect, you have to export all the artboards or all the elements one by one from XD, or you give the file to your developer and he can do that. But in the future, we see it as like we're looking at a way of making it easier. And yeah, I wish I could tell more about that. It's super exciting.
Sounds like that's a stay tuned and stay involved. So definitely keep your eye out on the features link, but also, yeah, it sounds like, get involved in the user voice community and website and keep an eye on that. Great. Well, if there are no more questions, this has been a really great session, Damien. I think we've learned a lot about XD, placing it both from using it, tinkering with it ourselves, but also teaching and helping to see it in a larger workflow of development of an application. For follow-ups, I will say I will be following up with creating a discussion forum, and you'll be receiving that along with a recording of today's session. And before we part ways here, I would like to take a moment to get some of your feedback on today's session. I also want to point out a couple of upcoming professional development opportunities on the Education Exchange. August 2nd, we have a flipped learning with Adobe. August 25th, we have a live session which is going to be a third part in a three-part series on career pathway alignment, and in particular looking at a California case study of how does career pathway alignment and career technical education affect my school programming, and really looking about how do you get funds to help support that. For always, we have a link to education live events schedule and also our collaborative online courses. We are currently running our Train the Trainer course, so for those of you who want to get certified as an education trainer, we do have, let's see, the second week starting now, and we will have registration open for a couple more weeks, so don't feel like you're behind if you do want to enroll in the course. We also have a self-paced digital storytelling course that's coming up at the end of July, and also if you look at the live event schedule, we have a great session, I believe it's July 13th, on using Adobe Spark. So with that said, I'll leave you with a great set of links for you to look at the professional development coming up on the Education Exchange for our community. And just once again want to thank Damien for your time and presentation today. Thank you all for joining us and look forward to seeing you at a future Adobe Education Professional Development event. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys. Stay in touch. Bye.
Justin.
Has left